Oh, what fun! Yes. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome to Dreamy Dreamland with your sensei, Al Bob. And don't believe a word I say. This program is only for entertainment's sake. Has nothing to do with anything. Love, and thanks about 2 weeks ago, someone sent $10 into my PayPal, which at that time was just what I needed, but I could use some more. It's been 2 weeks. It's interesting. Yesterday, it's been really sunny. So, the last 4 weeks, it's rained, 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 rained. So everything is greener than green, unbelievably green. And the rivers are really yummy, yummy. So there's a place 6 miles from me that the state has decided to put a parking lot and make it easy to get down. It used to you had to climb down the cliff, and a guy like me, and they made a nice little beach, and there's two big trees, so it's shady. And I sat down there, and and there was nobody. I mean, there were people, So that thing goes long, long. It's a long river, right? It comes off the Nolechucky, so it's called the Watoga. So it comes out of North Carolina from being hit by the French Broad and the Watoga, and the water's coming from the upper hills on Grandfather Mountain. And so this area has a lot, and that's why they built the TVA here. There's a lot of water here. There's a rainforest, right? And it dried out for a few years, but it's coming back as it's rainforest. And we used to get a gully washer every day, and now we get one. It rains every day, and it's a gully washer for maybe about 20 minutes, right? It's just really the perfection, right? So yesterday I did a few things, wrote a little bit, fixed some of my water system, went through my stuff and my vitamins, and that's something. I mean, you guys could really help me out because every month I just have about $400, and it's hard to spend $150 on supplements, which is what keeps me alive. And because the pharmaceuticals they give me, like they give me something for my blood pressure, and it makes my colon into concrete, meaning it gives me unbelievable constipation, right? And it seemingly doesn't lower my blood pressure. My blood pressure is, between, most days when I'm not, annoyed or running around, my blood pressure is around 90 over 60, right? Um, and if I'm running up and down the hills, it may go up to 120 over 50. And if something upsets me, it may go up to 130, right? And then, when I'm out and about, I try the blood pressure cup at Walmart's and Walgreens, and they're all close to what I have. But every time I see my doctor, it's like 160 over, it's like, because and I brought my blood pressure cup in, and I showed him. It shows the history of what my blood. I said, "Well, obviously your blood pressure is broken. Mine is right because it's mine." It's like, really, okay. And that's kind of what's going on in the world around us. So it was a beautiful day yesterday, and I went down to the river, and I sat on the thing, and there were these, two folk over here, and they were sunbathing, and there was this guy, and he had, case of beer, and he had started a fire, and the smoke was like smoking everyone out. But and they were like and going up the path and going further down, but the smoke would go down the river and smoke people out down there. But what they didn't know, instead of it being annoying, it actually, when the wind isn't blowing, there are, it's water, and there's little puddles of water, and there's mosquitoes, and all kinds of stuff. And with the smoke where we were, it was keeping all the bugs away. And it was kind of interesting because it gave me the opportunity to practice my ability to slightly be the pebble in the pond. So even though it was smoking out um, that beach big time, which kept the people away, which is, I mean, they're worse than mosquitoes. And I just, the smoke would just go around me, just go over there. Once in a while, would kind of come by, but it was wood and not gasoline. And so anyway, and the guy was just, I could, his energy was like really off the hook, right? Something had happened. And he was drinking. I mean, seriously drinking. I mean, he had gone through 12 cans of beer, right? And they were warm, right? So, this lady comes by and says, "You hungry?" And I go, "Yeah." And she looks at me and I smile and she smiles, but she, has Burger King or McDonald's or something. And she goes over and she gives this guy a sandwich. It's his mom, right? So she turns around and she gives me two sandwiches, a bag of chips. And you want a Coke? I said, "No, no, but thank you very much. I have some water here, but I can't drink that. But this will be nice. This will be good." And I said, "Let me look at your palm." I read her palm, and she just is howling, because I'm telling her all about her and what she was. It's because she was a hot tamale when she was a youngster. And I said, "You're still that hot tamale, but oh, I'm fat and I'm this and I'm that." I said, "Well," I said, I go, "when I was your age," she looked at me, right? So I'm in my 70s, and she's not quite 60. She's like 58. She looks like she's 110, right? But when I was 58, I was 400 pounds. I looked like death warmed over. I look like a golem. So, the the Hebrew Frankenstein that's made out of mud. And so, you know, we talk, and then she goes, "Honey, if you need anything." And so, he and he's playing Celtic music. You know, you're Scottish, and he's playing Irish music. He goes, because I could tell from his bone structure and his mom, right? So, I mean, she didn't say she was Scottish, but in her palm, I could see elements of that. She had played a drum and not a born, but more an Irish thing, right? And he was like, "What?" And he starts going on and on about his life. He tells me everything, right? So I don't read his palm. We're just talking, and I'm making him laugh. I'm saying things about stuff, right? And so the two girls over there, they who were like being all by themselves and not wanting, obviously they were expressing um, their orientation, which is fine. And so you know um, I basically you know they get up and come. "Can you read our palms?" And this one goes, "You question anything?" I said, "Well, it all depends. I mean, my man to charge for this." I said, "So you going to you going to college here?" And they, "Oh yeah." I said, "What?" One girl says, "I'm in economics. With my major is hotel management and economics, right?" And when I said the word gratuity, she said, "What's that?" And I said, "So what year are you in school?" "I'm about to graduate." I said, "So have you done any interns?" "What's that?" "Well, that's when you go work in the summertime on your thing." "Oh, no, you know, I don't have to." "Oh, you don't have to." "Oh, well, I'm just going to graduate and I'll be a manager of a hotel." "Well, my daddy works at." "Okay, then you'll probably have a job." And that's how it rolls in America, right? And so I give them a reading, and they're like, "Oh, it's so easy." I said, "Oh, so you're a princess? Oh, well, yes, I've been a princess my whole life." This stuff is like so ridiculously easy, right? I'm, and they get up and they had been asleep and they've been spooning, right, amongst the children and all, and it didn't bother me, and it didn't seem to bother the kids, but the Christian moms and dads were quite upset. They were way on the other side, and they were closer to the fire than I was, and they were, I mean, it was going straight to them, like the hell and brimstone was going straight to them. I mean, you can't write this stuff, right? So they're like annoyed, and they get up and they move over here, and hell and brimstone goes right. I mean, it's just like wherever this Christian family goes, the smoke goes right at them, right? And the guy is drinking, and now he's talking to me, and I'm listening, and I'm making a few comments that will make him laugh, and he laughs, and he starts laughing. He's like, "You want a beer?" And I say, and he hands me the one he's drinking. I said, "You don't have?" I said, he goes, "Yeah, one." And so he digs around, and it's like covered in dirt. I said, "Yeah, okay, not a problem." So I clean off the top, and I have my cup of coffee. I drink the rest of the coffee, throw the rest away, click, pour about that much of the beer, and then hand, because he's the one who really needs the beer. I'm just doing it in fellowship, and so he knocks it back, and he still got he made the gesture like this was his last one, and he was giving it to me. But no, he still has a few more left in the box. And so, because he's throwing the cans in there, so he had thrown them all over the place because everyone else complained about the fire, and I didn't, right? And he just ignored them and cried, right? And now I'm making him laugh. So he goes, "Get close." I said, "You get closer to me. I'm not getting closer to that smoke." And so he goes, "Okay, yeah." And he's in the sun and I'm in the shade. I said, I didn't say the smoke. I said, "Get in the shade. Come on." And he gets in there, he goes, "Oh wow, I didn't know how hot it was." And his body is like red like a lobster. I mean, drinking a whole case of beer, sitting in the sun, he was heading for, heat stroke. And I bet you that's kind of what he was looking for. But I was making him laugh. And he goes, "You got a bowl?" And I said, "No." So "You'd like to smoke?" I said, "Sure, but I don't carry anything with me. I never have it." He goes, "Well, we could, you smoke it. Do you ever smoke it out of a beer can?" "Yeah, you have quite a few." And he pulls out this knife. "This my father gave me. Look at it was made in 1961." Like that's a long time ago. And so, I was already 11 in 1961. So, and he wants me to hold it. I said, "No, no, no. That's very nice." And so, anyway, we keep, and he's like poking the holes in the thing, and he never gets around to filling it, right? But so other people start showing up, and a few of his friends show up, and they kind of, he must have done something because they come down, they see him there, they turn around and they go the path, because like I said, there's this path that goes along the riverbed, but it's on other people's property. Now everybody goes and you know goes on it, but every now and then that guy gets annoyed because he's got this big house on the other side of the river, and when it gets too many kids screaming and yelling and smashing and bottles flying through the air, that's when he calls the cops. So, and the cops, it's their playtime to hassle who's ever there, right? And if you're unlucky, then you get hassled. And I know most of those guys, so I don't really, I hobble. Once I see the guy on the thing and he's got the cell phone in his hand, that's when I just kind of move. I know my 360. Those are the two rules: know your 20 and your 360. So here it is, 14 minutes and 14 seconds. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome to Dreamy Dreamland and Sensei Bob. Here to tell you a story, and I'm telling you a story about life on the river and the bourgeois, right? And so you can either be the bourgeois, and just go look that word up and see what happened to the bourgeois in France during the revolution. When Marie Antoinette told the poor people, "Let them eat cake," and they tried to be nice. They rounded all those people up, put them over the place, and said, "Get out." And they didn't. You know? And they just kept saying, "Get out," and then they did. And for a whole year they told them to get out. And when they didn't, they came and chopped their heads off. So that's when you have disparaging, between the rich and the poor. And virtually every place um, that there's been a revolution of sorts, look at the Arab Spring. Yes, it was started by the CIA and others who wanted to, set that whole neck of the woods on fire. We started off by, going after Afghanistan, and then, oh my God, Saddam's got, we got, he's got aluminum tubes. Oh, and there was no evidence, and pretty much everyone in the intelligence agency was telling him, hey, no. But Dick Cheney kept telling his buddies at New York Times, Wall Street Journal, hey, this is what it is. And then they report it. Then he go on TV and say, "See, the New York Times says Saddam's got an atomic bomb. We have to invade." Right? So, and why did we invade in '91? Why did George H. go in there? Right? First you have to realize that Kuwait used to be part of Iraq, and not like a long time ago, but like in 1975. Before um, Iraq and Afghanistan went at it with each other. Kuwait was part of, but they had a lot of oil, right? And they were right next to all of the big time oil in Iraq. And Saddam was, he didn't want to get paid in dollars, blah, 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 even back then. But when he started the war with Iran, he basically became our buddy. And we gave him all this money and weapons and let him do whatever the heck he wanted. So that was fought to a standstill. It kind of crushed both economies. But Iran got the worst of it, and you know, and that's when George H. and Donald, not Donald, but Ronnie Reagan were in power, and that's when the neocons were reshaping America, and part of it was, to have a hegemony, right? A unipolar. Now there was already a unipolar power structure, and I mean the Cold War was a unipolar power structure. Russia and America were on the same. In World War II, they were buddies, and the Nazis were our buddies. This was all a scripted game. You have to realize, pretty much history from Babylon has been a scripted game, right? And so, you know, um, Saddam came to April Glaspie, who is, our America representative, the diplomat in Baghdad, and he goes, "Listen, the, all the European oil companies are in Kuwait, and they are slant drilling into our oil reserves. Yeah, they don't have the drills on our property, but they're going sideways and taking our oil. So we're going to go and Kuwait used to be part of Iraq, so we're just going to go in and take that over and just make them. We're going to let them be Kuwait, but we're going to like make sure they're not doing this to our oil, and we're going to, have Kuwait nationalize, the Seven Sisters, and because the Rockefeller oil empire didn't end, it just changed its name. That's what's happening to the countries around. It's just being changed its name, right? And go read 1984, and go read Brave New World. These books were not dystopian. Hey, oh my God, this is what's going to happen. No, these were two books written by guys who grew up in the rich families, and they were saying, hey, this is what we're going to do to you. Get ready, be happy that it's going to happen to you, because if you don't follow what we're prescribing, it's going to be even worse. And that's what the movie Zardos was about. That was even worse. And the even worse was everyone was turned into a zombie except the rich folk, who turned themselves into you know um, human robots. What do they call that? When you extend your life by putting yourself into a augmented reality, transhuman. That's what they call it. And that's what that movie was about, transhumans. And that was made in the '70s, right? And go watch that movie. Those three movies, 1984, Brave New World, and Zardos, and start off watching Gangs of New York. Those four movies will give you the worldview of where we are, who started it, what's going on, Who are you? Where'd you come from? What's going on? Right? And what do you want to do with your life? You're the decider. Stop letting other people. You're going to public school. You are being a zombie. I don't know, but someone wants me to teach high school, right? So they had me sign up, and they're deciding half of the crew are. We really need Al. I mean, he will change it, and we will be better for it. The other player, oh my god! And so I've been going to church, and I've been acting like Jesus, because that's what God's unconditional love is in my heart, and Jesus' unconditional forgiving is in my head. I mean, people go, "How can you live with that Floridian nut next to you? He's got all those guns and dogs and everything. He's shitting on everyone and blah 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 blah." And I go, "Well, that's all very true, and he is destroying everything around. But what's quite interesting is everything he destroys, he basically it's better for me, you know? So it's like, okay, here he comes. He's coming back in the road. Oh, let's see, did I come up here? Nope. Yeah, there he is. And last night, his kids were riding through someone else's property that's just been sold, and the guy's probably going to develop it. That's one of the only flat lots here. And they have turned it into their motocross. And, and now they drive through it at night because they're too busy during the day masturbating or whatever they're doing. I mean, pretty much if you live in America, whatever you're doing is a masturbatory exercise. You don't have to have your fingers down there really to be masturbating. You're watching too much TV, masturbating. Too much TikTok, masturbating. You're on YouTube. Well, not YouTube. Please, YouTube is a scholastic event. You're learning something, right? So good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and wherever you are, glad to see you. Just turned 24, 24, or 22, 22. And I could really use some money on the old PayPal. Get a hold of me at the dude awake 42 at Gmail. The dude awake 42 at Gmail. The dude awake 42 at Gmail. All in one thing, lowercase, right? Dude awake. And if you want to read any of my novels, I've been writing these novels for the last 2 or 3 years. I mean, I've been writing them for the last 20 years, but I've been, sitting down every day writing. And I have five, and I have about another eight kind of in in the process. Boy, he's really going back and forth. I think he's selling meth. Don't take my word for it. I have no idea. You know, but I've been living here 18 years, and there have been people up where he is because he's on the other side of me, and I would see a car go up there like once a week. I'd never see. I'm not looking or listening. But most people lived up there. We'd come down that crazy hill at about 3 or 4 miles an hour, and then go through my little holler, and then go up the other side of the big crazy hill. At a conservative 5 miles an hour. This guy shoots down that hill doing about 30 and hits my holler, and then zips up the thing. So he eats up the road, right? Because he's got his wheels spinning. And when you get at the top, where it's really, if you don't really know how to go. But the best way to do it is 5 miles an hour because it's only 2/10 of a mile. So if you're doing 30, the difference between the time of at the top of that hill and the top of that hill, and then it comes into a T, which is a cliff. So if you're doing 30 and you're at the top, you could very easily do that. And he will at some time. He's almost a few times. So his kids now are driving around here going even faster late at night. And around here, it's dark, dark. There are no street lights. There are no lights, just the lights on their little, uh, you know, motorcycles and four wheelers. And the ground here, because it rains so much, the topography changes all the frigging time. So, so I don't, that doesn't bother me. whatever happens to them, and I really don't see them staying here because they really are bored, right? And I mean, anyone who goes up 2/10 of a mile back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and then flies through the woods, but and it's still just now it's like 1/10 of a mile back and forth and back and around the trees, and I mean, is that really entertaining? But I sure know it's a lot of wear and tear on their $5,000, recreational vehicles. He's already crashed one of them. Last night those kids were going through there, and a tree fell down. So they come and flying down their little path. They didn't know that tree was there. It was dark as night. They only had one little light. Whammo! Right into it, and the wheel became a half moon. That wheel's probably $500, and he says, "I have no money. I have no money." Like, I asked him to drive to get my eyes operated, and I've helped him out a ton. I lent him all kinds of tools and fixed things for him, never charged him a nickel, didn't, and I really have no money. And come on, send me something through PayPal. The dude awake 42 at Gmail. Dude awake 42 at Gmail. Meaning, I mean, it's okay, it's not a problem for me. But if people, it's like you give something to Sensei Al Bob in his time of need, it'll do you good. It'll make you at least feel good, make you feel happy. So anyway, I basically was went to the river, right? So there's the guy drinking beer, and I'm making him laugh, but tears are coming down, and it keeps, you're really, he goes, I really like it. You make what's your name? And I, don't tell him my name. I don't ask him his name, right? And anyway, other people come. So the girls want their hands read. I read them, and right, and they're like, oh. And the one girl said, "Does it cost you any money?" And I explained to them that um, giving, and after I explain, a woman who's going into the hospitality business and studying economics, what a gratuity is. Um, I said, listen, if you give me a gratuity, it shows that you appreciate the value of yourself. That's what does tip stand for? To inserve, to ensure proper service. That's what tips stands for. So anyway, the girls, oh, how do you do that? That's amazing. Blah 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 blah. Right, and then they go get their inner tubes and they float down the river. Right, and so and then other people show, and then this guy shows up, and he's brought like a kitchen with him, and he's going to make and the guy, our drunk Scottish friend, uh, who's got serious misery problems. He's got two kids and he's raised them. His wife left him and he raised them until they were 15, and then the courts took them away from them, and now they're anyway. So and that's the story around here. It's misery central, and the rich people, just like the moron from Florida, he's miserable. You know, he is 32 years old, right? And he had, he's his mommy pays all his bills. Um, he gets to do whatever the fuck he wants. He's out here. He's built himself a military compound, and and so he thinks, and I left Florida because all those people, well, all those people are him. All his misery comes from him, and all of your misery comes from you. All of my misery comes from me. That's why I try not to inflict misery, right? So anyway, I'm there, and so this guy shows up with a kitchen, and he starts chopping, and he's got potatoes, right? And I said, "Oh, you got sweet potato?" No, they're just regular potatoes. And he's got potatoes, and they're out of a bag. I mean, he hasn't soaked them, hasn't washed them, hadn't boiled them first, and he's expecting to cook them on a little fire. Really, maybe if you put them on skewers and really stuck them in the fire, maybe. And he had all kinds of other things that you have to prepare before you put them on a grill. I mean, obviously, this guy has no idea about grilling. So anyway, I'm sitting away. I'm a good 30 feet from where that guy is. And now because the Scottish guy, the Highlander, and I are in the shade, and he's now sitting against the rock, and I'm sitting in my chair, and we're talking, and I say, "See how nice this is?" He said, it's like the sand is cool, and there's this rock, and it's just right for my back." And before I was sitting up, and it said, "Yes." And you were sitting in the smoke. Why were you sitting in the smoke? Because you were crying, and you didn't want people to see you cry, because it's okay to cry. And then he started really. "Ah!" Anyway, I was getting it out of him, and then so I'm watching as I'm talking to the Highlander. The girls have left in their inner tube, and other people, and the Christian family came in between that, and are like, "Ugh," and this one of their kids. I mean, why the beer can was full of dirt was the kid came over and started putting dirt into the box of beer cans, and he said, "Stop it, kid! Stop it, kid!" Right? And so the guy who comes with the kitchen, he comes with a girlfriend who's got, obviously, she's she's expanding on her peripheral vision of her orientation, because she's like looks more wild than the two girls who were spooning each other there, but she's with this guy, whether he's paying her, I have no idea. But she sits down, and she's got this. I mean, I shouldn't talk because I wear interesting women's clothes myself, and because they're cheap. When one wants to get rid of something, that $15 pair of pants is now 50 cents. I bought Bandak pants that are just amazing because I can pull them up above my kneecap, and now they're shorts, right? They're just truly amazing. I've always been a fashion plate, right? And I can wear it. I can wear this women's outfit and have my Tennessee hunting hat and my man bag, my hunting jacket, and I look like one of the boys. And when they look at my pants, it's floral camo, and you go, "Oh." Anyway, so this guy is unpacking his kitchen. The girl's got a dog, right? And she just lets him loose, right? And he starts getting everyone's stuff, and people are, right? And so um they tie him up, and they tie him up kind of between the fire and me and this cottage guy, but not the dog is a good 10 feet because he's on a leash, he's tied up, right? But he's right there, and I go, "Good boy, sit on my back." And so he does, right? And because he just wants to be a dog, right, and not a fashion accessory. So anyway, the dog gets up and is moving around, and I look at the dog and I said, "Not near us, please." So he goes over and he shits right next to where the guy doesn't say anything. And the dog walked around like, "Hey, I gotta go, I gotta go, I gotta go." He did that for a good 10 minutes. That's a good road over to where the trees are, where no one goes, and let the dog go in there. But the dog was, "Hey, I gotta go." So what does he do? He starts to look at us, and I go, "Not near us." And so he goes over some shit, maybe 3 feet from where the guy's cooking, right, and where the girl is, right, and I start laughing hysterically, and I say to the highlight, "Look at that dog. That dog is showing what it thinks of its owner." I'm saying it loud enough for everyone on the beach. And so everyone on the beach is looking around, and now they were upset when they let the dog roam around. And now that the dog is shit on the beach, and the dog did a pretty good job because there was this branch, and he shat on the branch, right? And so the Christian boy who threw the dirt on the Highlanders beer cans, um, basically, goes over there and starts throwing dirt around, and he picks up this shit and he throws it on the girl, who then throws it at the guy cooking. And then the kid picks it up and throws it at the guy cooking because it wasn't close enough. It was like And the mother of the Christian's watching this go on. She doesn't say, Bobby, don't put that shit up in your hands. You're going to eat with it. I'm going to give you a peanut butter jelly sandwich right now. She didn't wash his hands. It's just like, this is America, right? So this is going on. And so the guy is prepared the food. He's cut it all up. And it's you can see him cutting the onions, and I don't know where he got those onions, but they were like rocks. He was cutting up the potatoes. He like needed a chainsaw, and I just was like, and so and he's acting like he's Mister. He's going to impress this girl, by cooking this meal for her. Anyway, so he basically um, gets out a can of gasoline, right? He's gone and broken up a little woods. He made a little teepee, and he's pouring gasoline. Now there's already fire there, right? I mean, it's kind of smoky. It's no flames, but where there's smoke, there's fire. And so, you know, he's pouring the gasoline on, and it's first evaporating. It's not just the liquid; it's now the vapor of the gasoline, and it finally catches. And the guy, the dog, and the girl, in the orientation outfit, um, are enveloped by this whoosh. They didn't have any gasoline on them, but the whoosh of the explosion of the gas. And the guy and I are under the tree about 20 feet, and you could feel the heat, but we're 20 feet away from the circle of flame. And so I'm just going, and the kid he nearly gets barbecued, right? Because he was the closest to it. And the Christian lady doesn't even think about her kid because she's in the water, kind of splish splashing around and looking sexy. She gets up all wet and she's like showing her body because she's wearing her two-piece suit. And again, I was 460 pounds, so I know people can be fat shamed, but I never was. I couldn't care less. But anyway, I mean, she definitely has a set of fun bags, but she's also got a lot of rolls, and so um, a lot of cheese doodles gone past those Christian lips, um, and I'm sure she didn't think at all what would Jesus do. So, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome to Dreamy Dreamland with your sensei Al Bob. And what's up? Who are you? Where'd you come from? Let's have some discourse here. And no one leaves any comments. Come on, let's see some comments. Jamie's the only one ever, and he does some quite nice ones, but I haven't seen him in a while. So after that, all of that, this guy stumbles in who's even worse blitzed than the Highlander. And he comes and he's got his bag of weed and he rolls a spliff and he's sitting right with us. And he rolls it up and he looks at me and goes, "Do you smoke, man?" And I go, "Yeah." So he hands me this spliff and a lighter. And so my lips are going to be the first on this vaginal, virginal spliff. So I'm going, "Yeah, I'll take part of this." So I fire it up, and I am smoking. These guys don't realize I lived with Rastas for many years, so I know, oh no. And I just kept inhaling, 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 and holding it, and the cloud covered the whole beach. That inhaling and inhaling and inhaling, and these guys were so amazed, and it was a nice big split. And I smoked, nice big split. I smoked it down, not all the way down to this, but to about a third. I took 2/3, and I was feeling no pain. Right, my eyes were seeing better. My everything felt better, and I said, looked in my bag. I took out a little bottle of water, spat out, spat out, and the other half, glug, 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 and I said, "See you, gang. I gotta go. I put people to see, places to be." Right. So I get up. Oh, before I do that, there's another family, and they're on the other side of the lake, right? And there's this guy and a younger guy, and they're across the other side of the lake, of the river, and and this girl is kind of on the other side, and she is good looking. She isn't like the Christian lady, chunky with fun bags. This woman is well proportioned, and she is serious, about her diet, and you can see by the texture of her skin. One guy once, who knew about skin, looked at mine and said, "Wow, for a guy who's like your age and has diabetes and all these other things that are wrong with him, he was a doctor. Your skin is marvelous. How do you do that?" It's called diet. You know, Basically, I don't eat anything except what grows around here and what few vegetables. On the 16th of the month, I start getting some vegetables. I have about $48 to in food stamps. I used to get 290, and then with this inflation thing, it jacked it up to 45. So, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome to Dreamy Dreamland because it just turned 40. And, I want to thank that one person who sent me $10 ish 2 weeks ago. I haven't seen anything in my PayPal. It's still working, you know. That guy sent it and it all worked nicely. So, come on, put something in that PayPal, so I could eat more than, 3 times a month, and maybe put a little more gas because it's hard for me to come, you know, do the show. This is the first time I've done it here because my neighbor has been renting his house out, and this is the first time nobody's been here. So anyway, and this ain't like he's not really my neighbor. I have to drive to, but it's the closest Wi-Fi I got. The others, there's one that's maybe 8 miles away, and then there's another one that's 18 miles away. Double it, right? So I have about a third of a tank of gas, you know, and so no one's saying anything. How about some more thumbs up? Come on, guys. If John can get 198 people every time he does a show, and all he does is, preen himself in front of the camera and say how do you like my hair, and then he does, I've just done 6,000 push-ups, and he's done like three for the camera, and then talks about Jesus in a monetary way, if I always talk about Jesus. That way, I'm going to heaven. That's called transactionalism. You know, you know, you, God's unconditional love has to be in your heart. You know, Jesus' unconditional forgiveness has to be in your mind. And then when life happens to you, you have to, that has to be your worldview. Oh, there we go, lightning bug. He is, because he knows that shit better than anybody. And when I was doing shows on his channel, I was getting 75,000 people, and he was like loving it because he was making, 700, $1,800 each, show I was doing. So, but he hated it because people told him to shut up, you know, and so, that's why he kept throwing me out because he'd be conflicted. He was making about 1,800 bucks, and he kept saying, "You're costing me money," and I was buying the food and driving down, wearing my car out, doing all his errands for him, right? Because in actuality, everything I do consciously. I don't do it to, oh, I need someplace to live. I didn't need to live there because he threw me out 32 times over 2.5 years. Third time, each time he threw me out, I had an amazing adventure that was so much more fun than being with him that I didn't care. It's almost looking for the next time, because it was a challenge. And he always made it tougher and tougher. It was like a TV show. See, we could have done a really good TV show, something like a reality show. I mean, really, come on, TV guys. Get a hold of me at the dude awake 42 at Gmail, the dude awake 42 at Gmail. When you send something through PayPal, dude awake 42 at Gmail. And you TV guys, I got novels, I got movie scripts. I'm like, I'm the best actor, You know, Giovanni, what are you doing? You're never telling anybody what you're thinking. I can act. You know, I hope you find this entertaining because I find it very entertaining to do. I mean, the only reason I really like doing this is because a it exercises a lot of parts of me, meaning my shamanic self. Because before I do this, I meditate and I drop the old shamanic pebble in the pond, and even though it shows that what I really love is when I do a really good one, and I do get a bunch of people. Whenever I see the number of people watching, and it's around 8, it really means like 50 people are watching, right? And those are the ones. The 8 are the ones that are kind of involved, and yeah, and so my pleasure is I really love it when people make comments because then I can see their shamanic, light being. I see yours, and you're a lot like me in a lot of ways. I mean, there's this thing called Freudenschauer. It's a German word for getting pleasure out of other people's miseries. I mean, I'm a social scientist. One of the reasons I became a social scientist was to watch why do people go to races? Car races? Why do you go to NASCAR where they just go round and round and round in a circle? Why? I mean, I used to be a newspaper photographer, and I went to two of those, and I couldn't stand them. I sent guys. I gave the passes I got to go to the races to other people I knew who loved NASCAR, and I would give them the throwaway camera. I said, "Here, take these, take pictures of whatever, just not you and your friends. Otherwise you're going to be printed in a newspaper, and if someone's looking for you, just other people that you don't know, the crowd, and what's going on in a race, and go down to the where they're fixing the car and get some pictures of that, and just roam around and take them, and then bring them back to me. If you want any more of these tickets, you got to bring back the cameras." And I would, and they would shoot the shit out of them. And I give them three of these throwaway cameras, which were back in the day $1.25 at Walmart's. I go to Walmart's, have them, and I would say, I want the negatives of these. And then when they put them on, and when they got CD-ROMs, I want negatives and CD-ROMs. And I would give them to my editor, and my editor loved those pictures. They were perfect because it was right for the audience. The moron who took it was the audience they were looking for. He took the pictures the audience wanted to see, and I couldn't stand them. But I got the photo creds. I almost, NASCAR almost wanted to hire me as one of their photographers. Right? I should have gone along with it and just gave out the throwaway cameras. But anyway, there I was at the river, and so this guy nearly sets himself on fire, and then this family is coming across, and so guys are on the other side, and I'm watching them, and they're crawling up and down um, the rocks because this river has cut itself. It's like the Grand Canyon. There are a lot of rocks on either side, and so the kid is really good. The younger man is good. I can't tell him he's a kid until he gets closer, and the other guys just like walk along the edge of the water. And the good looking mom, she shows up, and I go, "Oh, so you're the smart one. You didn't do that." And she kind of giggles, and we start talking. And she is really hot. She's probably in her eh, late 30s, early 40s, but she's been taking care of herself, right? And so, um, you know, uh, we talk. Let me read your poem. And she is like, "How do you do that? That's so amazing." Oh, the people are like a book. They're right in front of you. They open, I'm not really, I'm just pretend. I mean, that's not true. There are 8 things I look at in someone's palm. That's it. There's 1,500 other things I could look at, but I don't. It's like getting in the weeds. Just the 8 ones. Your mouths of prosperity, um, your lifeline, your heart line, these 2 fingers, your thumb here, right? And also, if you got white dots on your fingernails, that means you worry too much. If you have little moons in your fingernails, that means you're right on. You're 20. You're always right on. You're right on time, right? And then the knobbiness of your knuckles. This is your intelligence. These ones are your empathy. So it's pretty easy because I start talking about things I see on the palm, those 8 things. And what I'm really looking at is their body language, how they're standing, which way they're looking, what's going on. And and that's how I can truly go further in depth. And once I start illuminating that, they start showing, their energetics. And then I can really tell them stuff about, I mean, deep stuff, like what happened to them as a kid and the things that really bother them and how they deal with this, that, and the other thing. And, when I used to do cold readings for lawyers, I mean, that's really what got me good. I was taught by some really good people. I used it a good deal, but as a shrink, but man, when I work for lawyers, that's really what sharpened my edge. So, and also when I worked for lawyers, I didn't care about any of the people involved because they're always rich people. They weren't, poor people who were getting chewed up by the system. These were people who had been using the system and they were just being stupid by wanting this, that, or the other thing, and they're trying to use the system to get it. And they don't realize that this is an illusion. Even if they win in the roulette wheel of justice, they're not going to be happy. They're not going to win anything really. So, and a good example of that. So anyway, so I'm talking to her, and then the husband and the kids show up, right? And I read their palms, get them like dead, right? And they're like, oh, amazed. And I start telling stories and this and that, and about who, and then, they tell me all about who they are. And I then reflect it back to them about what they're doing. And they're like, oh, man. Right now, these people got some money. They got, a big family business. My grandfather started this. We're the largest, blah, 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 in North Carolina, blah, blah. We're not from around here, blah, blah, but we're just looking for something, blah, blah, blah. My daughter's going to college there. We just dropped her off. We're going to go have dinner with her, blah, blah, blah. Right. So, um, I go, well, that's cool. We're talking. And so this guy is perfect to buy my little deep cream. Right. And he'd probably do a great job with it. Right. Because they kind of do that. Right. But they're, down in Durham, right? So anyway, so I'm talking to them, and I want to get away from this crowd about, the dog shitting on everyone, the kid throwing the shit on everyone, the guy setting himself on fire, uh, the crazy Christian people. And so I go up, and this mom, and the mom is saying, "He's not my son's father." She must have said it about 20 times. And I'm looking at the dad. Normally that would piss most, new husbands. And how long you been married? Oh, about 10 years. So they're not new. And obviously they're taking care of each other in ways that are fine. And she's saying that it's almost fine for him because their son, he is like one of those, oh, what do you call it, calico kids. He's not your average kid, right? And so even though he loves him and they're climbing up hills, and thing is the kid's better than his dad at anything, right? He's really smart, and he's like climbing up and down this hill like a Spider-Man, right? And he is his the kid is his own decider, right? And I tell him, I said, so you're doing this, just, you're a Virgo, you know better than anybody else. And he's looking at his parents saying, see, even this guy knows it. And I said, but you don't rub it in people's faces. Otherwise it's going to blow back on you. Don't do that. So he's kind of, getting it. So anyway, I go up with them. And I tell everyone, I gotta go. I got people to see, and I read some more. I'm more being more amusing. We didn't take any pictures of ourselves. I said, give me your phone. Put it so I can take pictures. So I used to be, I'm a photographer. I used to do weddings, so I just go click, 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 click. I just go around in the circle. I said, just keep moving, click, 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 and then I handed her the girl's phone, and she's looking at it because everyone, this is an amazing photo. I said, hey, I'm a good photographer, right? And they asked me when I read their palms, "Do we owe you any money?" I said, "No, it's a gratuity, whatever you want to give." Right. So anyway, the guy gets in the car and he's got all this stuff. So he's got his little go bag and he takes everything. He's making sure no one broke into his car and stole the stuff. Well, the thing's been locked. It's gotten, when he opened it up with a little button, boop, boop, you know, um, no one got in his car. And I mean, he's got, a Ford F-150, top of the line, total macked out e-car. It's probably $120,000. It's probably a year old, if that. Right? And so, uh, you know, it's got the 4 doors, it's got the gigantic, you can put a ton of stuff in the back of this pickup set, the big bed. And it's got the fancy schmancy cover, so it's like a gigantic trunk, right? It's locked. Anyway, so he's checking his um, go bag, and he takes out his wallet to make sure his credit cards are in there and his driver's. It's like someone really took that shit, really. Okay. Anyway, he's opening up and he's got a wallet full of Benjamins. And I said, I live on $400 a month, and you asked if you know what I do costs anything. No, but you could give me one of those Benjamins. And he goes, I couldn't do that. I need that. Oh, well, good luck with that. Have a good time. And I gave him a couple of my cards and said, listen, you're up here and around. Your daughter's gonna go to school around here. Come visit. You might want to buy my place. And I don't need a whole big chunk, just some earnest money. Let me stay there while you fix the place up. The really smart thing was turn it into a glamping site because this is perfect glamping, right? And so we'll see what happens with that guy. But I would say no because he could not. Now, other people like him, like people who are driving around here and just come up my driveway, and I do the same thing for them. Two of those people have, pulled out their wallet and handed me a Benjamin, right? Without me kind of begging for it, right? So, it's still like 3 o'clock, and it's still going to be hot back at the deep green. So I pick up my hammock, and my bag has hammock and swimming shoes and 2 bottles of water. And I tie it onto my chair, my garden chair that's light, and the bag actually is the bag that the chair came in, but I put the other stuff in and kind of wrap it around the end and just put it over my shoulder and go up the path with my walking stick, and I'm looking at all the places where the kids are hanging out, right? And so, okay, okay. Then I find this really nice spot, right? And it's kind of a oh, what do you call it? When there's a lot of water, it's all the phyla is exposed. You can see nature because the water cuts into it and leaves it, and the trees are still happy. Especially if they get watered, they soak in the water a little bit, and then the water goes around, and they're dry and they're happy, right? Because good drainage, right? So if it was wet all the time, the trees would probably die. But so there's some nice trees, perfect for my hammock, right next to the gurgling water, and there are these and there's people not real close over there, but they this was a place where they first set up, and they decided, oh, we want to go barbecue ourselves in the stream, and the stream is where you really get sun, like the Highlander. Because it's cleared out, direct sun. The water is kind of keeping you cool, so you don't think you're that hot, but it's like baking you. So anyway, those kids are all out there and that, and they're, semi naked and frolicking around, and I'm in my hammock just enjoying the breeze and hearing their little voices, a couple hundred yards away, and I'm half blind. I can't even see them. I just looking at their energies. Oh, they're happy. So they come closer and they get stuff that they've left there to eat or right. And so I'm covered up by the hammock, right? And that's one thing I do because it's also keeping me from anything falling on me and the sun really getting, because you're in the woods, the sun moves. Sometimes there's a direct beam on you. Anyway, so I'm there, I'm listening to their conversations. And they're half of them are about to graduate. A couple have already graduated, but they're, not going home. They're spending the summer here. And they're probably not going to get a job right away. And they probably haven't been on internships and they blah, blah, blah. Just going to end up, owing a lot of money. Right. So, but they had a kind of a lot of fun for 4 years drinking and fucking. And, so, anyway, uh, basically, I'm listening to all of this, and so this one girl is she's like, you know, I have a bachelor's degree in psychology, so she's acting like, so I kind of lean out of because I put my hammock, so it's not really all these other people's hammocks are like 4 feet up the ground, so they kind of have to hop up there. And then underneath there are all these limbs and big rocks. And so I found a place that didn't have the big rocks, but the limbs were there. And I was only like, you know, maybe my butt and the bottom part of my hammock was maybe 6 to 8 inches had clearance, between the ground and the roots. So if the thing I were to fall, I would like go maybe 4 to 6 inches, and I'd land in the mud and not against a gigantic rock. So anyway, so I can just kind of swivel over and sit there, right? Because it's just at the right height where it's, when I swivel over and put my legs down, it's like a chair, right? So, and I have this big thing in the back, so it's very comfortable, right? So I swivel around and I kind of look and there's two girls, very hot, and six guys, and they're like flies, right? And so and the girls are playing these guys, and it's obvious that they have played these guys for the last 4 years. They're like, they know them anyway. They know everything about these guys. So anyway, the girl's going on and on about being a shrink. I said, "Oh, so who's your favorite um psychologist?" And she doesn't know what I'm talking about. Now, she studied psychology. I have a bachelor's degree in psychology. She should have read a few psychologists, right? And there are lots of them. You know, there's a lot of good stuff in psychology. Too bad it's not practiced. And that's why I don't practice it, because I did for 6 years, and when I was in the VA, that was great because they let me do what I wanted. I helped people. It was great. And then we built protocols that really help people. And my boss, got laid off seriously, like a bullet in his head. And then I was brought in and said, "Well, you've done a great job." I said, "Well, I got another 3 years to go with my contract." "Oh, no." And they slipped me an envelope of Benjamins of what I would be paid for those 3 years and a bonus, right? And a nice little piece of paper in there that said that I had, you know, had due diligently served my country, and I was good to go. If anyone ever had a question, I could show them that piece of paper, right? So I'm a smart guy. All those Benjamins, that nice people. So my responsibility is taken care of. I don't really need to stay there. I was already doing lots of other stuff because Fort Hamilton was in Brooklyn, and New York City. I just took the subway to work. And back in the day when a roommate, didn't pay what he owed me and or the rent, he left his. He said, "You can use my motorcycle," right? So he, put it there. And when they sent his renewal for his registration, I took it down to the DMV and just signed the on that piece of paper my name on it, and then they gave me the title to the bike, and then it was a nice. And when I sold the bike was not quite what the guy owed me, so I felt totally legit. Right? And I asked my police friends and my guy who I used to get my $200 car from. He ran where they would tow cars, and it was this big dock that went out into Hudson, and they could stick 1,000 cars on this thing, and people would come and get it out of Huck, and it was surrounded by water, one gate, so no one could go get their car really, right? And they were all parked like really. It was really hard to find your car, hard to get it out of there. So and there was always two police cars there with policemen and the 4 or 5 DOT guys and the 5 or 6 guys who tow cars. So but the guy who ran it, right? He was my bud, and he on the side on the dock over there, he had a used car lot where the cars that no one ever got. He did exactly what I did. He just signed the thing, signed it over to himself, got a registration title for it, moved the car over there, and sold them. Right. So he's my bud. So I would say, "You got $100 car for me, or a $200 car, or if I really wanted a flashy car, $300 car." This is in the '70s, and this is when New York was broke. Economically broke and physically broke in. Right. And I love it when people, "We have to defund the police." Well, New York City experimented with that. One day they had 30,000 cops, and then they went broke, and they went from 30,000 to 8,000 in less than 4 days. They just signed, told the other, 22,000, sorry, we're laying you off. And they went to being criminals. They went from being the cop and being a criminal to working for the mob. And I mean, they were working for the mob when that's one reason why they got rid of those guys. But the police department went from 30,000 to 8,000 in New York City and was that way between 1972 and 1982 and really further on, right? When it was the rule, I mean, Donald Trump was ruling. He was one of the barons of New York, right? And you know, that's really so. When people go on about how terrible things are, no, I used to live so that they didn't even have enough money to mow the lawn, and so Wall Street, and they call the Battery because it's the most southerly point of New York City, Manhattan, facing the Statue of Liberty, the open Hudson, and the East River, and that's where the Dutch put their guns. So whenever the Spanish were going to come in and invade, they had perfect. Those guys had to come in this thing, and they had enough guns that they go boom, 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 boom. They called it the Battery, so that's why they keep it. So now turn it into a park, and that's where the Staten Island Ferry is, and underneath it is where the on one side is where the tunnel to Brooklyn is, and there's another tunnel that the FDR Drive comes, and instead of going, through Wall Street where all the rich guys are, and or through the Battery, the sacred Battery, it's all underground, which is kind of what they should have done with the Brooklyn Queens Expressway, but they did it on purpose. Robert Moses was the most racist guy you ever wanted. I'm Moses. And so he cut through neighborhoods and destroyed them. And then banks redlined them. And, that was it. That's why we had, in 1980, we had 1 million abandoned apartments. The landlords just walked away from them, right? Because they weren't making money. And there was no way they could amortize anything. The real estate wasn't worth anything. So they just walked away and said, to the city, you take care of it. Because the city, those were all rent controlled apartments. And the city didn't have any money, so they couldn't even handle that end of it. And so they just, let the buildings run down, and then people would have fires, and then they'd have the excuse of getting people out, and then they'd cinder block the first 2 stories and take out the fire escapes. And so, that's how 1 million apartments. And when I came back from Ireland, and Adam Purple had already showed me how to live in abandoned buildings, and so I found some really nice ones, and just was having great. I turned one into a nightclub, that I lived in. I was like, Mr. Rick. It's like I called it Casablanca, right? So, I mean, that's the beauty of New York. I could just roll in there and do stuff like that, and especially in that 20-year period, no one cared. A city of 7 million people, no one cared. You could go to Detroit today and do the same thing, a little more, but New York was very dangerous. When I lived in the Lower East Side, there were 5 people murdered on a 6 by 8 block thing every week for 20 years. So that's 52 times 20 years. Let's say 20 times 50, 2 times 5. So that's like 2,000 times 5. 2 times 5 is 25. So you're looking at close to 25,000 people murdered in a 20-year period. Now that's a lot of folk. But concurrently, the EPA said in their non discriminated data points that close to 900,000 New Yorkers um, died every 10 years just from dust, the crap out of buses. You know, the death that crap death went up by 1,000% after um, um, 9/11 because one reason those buildings were taken down the way they were was that they had already seen their day. Meaning, the guy who bought it, Epstein or um, what Goebbels or whatever his name was, he bought it for roughly $3 million. I mean, that was the earnest money he put it down. He paid 100 and something $1 million for the whole footprint of the World Trade Center, and it wasn't just two buildings. There were like 12 buildings there, right? I mean, the two big towers were the most notable. The big tower that was standing on its side, Building 7, that came down, that didn't get hit by airplane or wasn't on fire or nothing. It just kind of, oh my God, it's 9/11. That's where the FBI, CIA, NSA had kept all, all those boxes of stuff they took out of Donald Trump's basement the other day. Well, that whole building had that, right? And by the Congress and the Supreme Court had like all the information on what happened to Kennedy was in that, right? All the things that dealt with certain things of technology and UFOs was in that building. Whether it was in there when the building went down, that's another story. But the excuses, oh, that was, I mean, whenever you're looking for a document, oh, it was in Building 7. Sorry. So that's the world we live in, kids, and I've been watching it for the last 70 something years. And I've been aware of it, really seriously aware of it since I was 6, right? And I thought everyone had the same kind of worldview that I had. I didn't really realize that until I was 50, right? And that's about when I started working in the corporate world seriously, for desperate lawyers and fixing big things for them and getting paid ridiculous amounts of money for it until I died, and after I died, they replaced me with an app because 7 years after I died, I made I took out my little black book and started calling up my clientele and saying, "Hey, I'm still around. Do you need me?" And they said, "Oh well, we thought you were dead. We heard you died in a plate of spaghetti in Miami." I said, "Well, yes and no. I'm still here. Do you need me?" And they said, "Well, we've replaced you with an app." And it's so much better because you used to fix things and then we didn't have return clients. This apps fix the thing, but not the people. So we have a circular door of clientele. They just keep coming in. So it's the gift that just keeps giving. So sorry. But we're glad you're alive. You were fun. You want to go party some more. I said, no, no. So, well, it's 1 hour, 22 minutes, and 22 seconds. So I'm going to say, um, I'm going to cut out of here in a little bit. What time is it now? It's 11. Oh, it's now 12 o'clock. And how much battery do I have left? Ooh, how much? Oh, I have 60%, but I'll save that. So, um, good talking to you. Oh, so all those kids that was around and the girl who said, "Oh, I'm a she knew nothing." I mean, and that's when I said, "So, have you been volunteering? Do you do any blah blah?" Oh no, I'm just I said, "Good luck with that." So, and she didn't even get my sarcasm. And then I read her palm, and she, "Wow, that's amazing. How do you do that?" I said, "Well, a lot of skill and talent, and I'm psychic." And the guy goes, "So does that cost anything? Can you do mine?" And I should have said, "Yeah, $100." But I said, "No, I do this as a service for mankind," and that might went right over their heads, right? And I said, "I do take a gratuity. You want to give me a tip?" Right over their heads. But I just lined them up. There were 8 of them. Boom, 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 boom. Right, and they were all like, right. So they're all getting their shit together. I said, "Listen, I really need some money. You don't have any, a dollar or two or five or 20." And they all open up their wallets. They got 20s in there. They don't have Benjamins. They got 20s in there. So, "Oh no, I need that." I said, "Well, can anyone help me break down my camp here and help me get back to my car?" "Oh no, we got someplace to go. We're too busy." Oh, but they weren't too busy to spend 20 minutes for me to read all of their palms. And that, as a social scientist, is it's a heralding of where the community is going. Right now, I'm going to head over to this church, and they're just going to be letting out when I show up. So I'll see the reaction of that. Right. So there are a couple of people I know that's where they're going to be. So um, we'll see if I can run into them. So otherwise, about a few miles from there is another place, and they have a very nice a chicken and dumplings Sunday meal for about $4. That's definitely in my thing. So come on, guys, send your Al Bob some money at PayPal, dudewake42@gmail, dudewake42@gmail. And I don't really see anybody communicating to me. Now I have, but the dudewake, I only have one. I have two other whatchamacallits, Gmail accounts because I've changed them each time I got a new phone. But I've kept all the old stuff because I kept the old phones just to go on the internet, right? And because it has all kinds of stuff in there, I couldn't figure out how to transfer it from one phone to the other. So I just keep keeping my old stuff and keeping it up. So um, I only have one dudewake42@gmail. When you go into PayPal and say that, and I can tell it works because about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, somebody sent me 10-ish kind of dollars, and that was very nice. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. It kind of squeaked me through to the end of the month. $10 did, for a week and a half. Now, if someone buys my place, which I think will, I know will happen soon for a worthwhile price, um, that will, shoot me someplace else, like a pachinko machine, and that'll be interesting, you know, because I've pretty much done everything I can do here, right? And even though this school system, but it's too far away. It's 30 miles and it's in another state and in another direction. And drive my car is not happy. It's okay, it gets me here to there, but it's old and creaky like me. And having to drive it 60 miles every freaking day, I don't think I would like it. And I don't have the cash to replace that. But if I bought that, I buy myself whatever. Anyway, so I buy myself a car that was in really good shape that had a carburetor, not a computer, because when the shit would go down, that thing would still roll. Anyway, so it's fun, and thanks for that one comment from our brother there. Let's see, boom, boom, from Light Being, right? Thank you, Light Being. Come on, more comments like that. Some more thumbs up, some more comments. All those things, graduate me up through the algorithm, right? And so we will leave you with this. Let's see. Come on. Do, 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 do. Let's work out and talk.
I got the energy and motivation. Maybe God thought it was okay, probably. Funky town. No. I can't play it. I play it, but
He really looks like he's working out, doesn't he?
I don't have the right to. I'm gonna leave here and go to Los Angeles. I don't feel like risking my life to go to Texas.
Why would going seeing his children risking his life?
I didn't think I could do it.
I wonder why.
She's ignored, or she hasn't responded to a bunch of messages, but leaving tomorrow to go to Texas. And see my kids.
Hey yo, project card check.
Fast, 400 on the dash, 55 bills, about 50 for the tax on it.
Yeah.
It may look like a desert, but it's not. What you're looking at is a reservoir in Spain. 84% empty. You can see the paddle boats and water slides abandoned nearby. Aquatic life driven to death. The reason? Climate change. Spain had its hottest July since 1961. Some parts of the Iberian Peninsula are at their driest in 1200 years. Let that sink in. 1200 years. Now for the next set of pictures. What you're looking at is Italy's longest river, River Po. Large sandbanks have started appearing around it. Why? Again, climate change. This region is facing its worst drought in 70 years. As the river pulled back, it reveals some ghosts of the past, like this one, a bomb from World War II. The device was found by fishermen in the region. They called in the army, which carried out a controlled explosion. Now we go to France. See those beautiful sand plains? What if I told you those are not plains? What you're looking at is a dried up river. Not a single drop of water remains. All the tourist boats have been beached as a result. The restaurants nearby have nearly shut. The reason? Our next set of pictures will give you an idea. Wildfires are raging across southwestern France. Nearly 6,000 hectares of forests have been burnt. This blaze follows two wildfires in the month of July. Put together, they scorch more than 20,000 hectares. What do these pictures tell you? A crisis of biblical proportions. You've seen the pictures, now let me show you the data. 63% of land in Britain and Europe is facing drought, 63%. That's almost the size of India. 46% of the land is under warning, 17% under a state of alert. It's a perfect climate storm. The rains have reduced to a trickle, the temperatures have hit multi-decade highs. As a result, Europe's rivers are drying, the reservoirs barely have any water left, and the situation is the same across the continent. Southern England had its driest July since 1836. Overall, it was Britain's driest July in 20 years. The government has declared amber alert for the next 4 days. Temperatures are so high, it could trigger fires. In France, they already have. It was their driest July since records began in 1959. 3 countries breached 40 degrees Celsius last month: Spain, France, and the UK. Now remember, we're talking about Europe. Their summers are supposed to be pleasant and cheery. It's supposed to be the travel season. Instead, Europe is literally baking.
We haven't analyzed fully the event because it is
Okay, so
based on
first off, I'll tell you a little story. Back in 1972, 71 to 73-ish, right in there, probably closer towards 73, 74. I came back from being out west, and I had worked at the national laboratories building power supplies for experiments, right? I was sent to Los Alamos, San Diaz, Kirkland Air Force Base, those 3 places, and other places that aren't on the map, right? And I'll tell you stories about those places, So, and a ton of dumps, deep underground military bases. I worked for a company that did the power for those, and that's what I wouldn't quite say I'm claustrophobic, but I surely don't like going down an elevator down 1,000 feet into this underground thing, and there's 1,000 feet of earth above me. That's never. And I was in 2 accidents. When my nickname became the dead guy, because I kept surviving these critical just unbelievable accidents. And I told my boss, listen, I'm very important to you. You want me to still be it? Get me out of here. I'm just walking away. I don't care. And so he did. He got me in the national laboratories, which is a lot safer, kind of, but not so much. When you're working on something and everybody around you is in a spacesuit, So the bottom line is I saw technology in the early 70s that is probably 1,000 years ahead of where we are today. What's on the shelf in Walmart's 1,000 years ahead of that, right? And I also got to go to these conferences. My boss said I need to, I have to send somebody or be at a conference. To keep my accreditation of working on this shit, I have to go to these conferences. So I got to send you. So I did. and pretty much everybody there was in their, the youngest person other than me. I was in my 20s. Youngest person was in their 50s, right? And I had been in the alternative technology community between 1967 and when I went into the West, which is like 71, 72. It was right when Jerry Ford became president. So whenever that was, right? And so I was pretty well known in that set. And when I was in that set, I got sent to a conference at John Hopkins where they basically, there was this thing called Alternative 3, right? There's three alternatives for the human race. One, we use the advanced technology that we had garnered and make the earth a garden of paradise. That was one where everyone would have what they needed. Would be a planet of abundance. Everything would be in balance. Nature would be happy. It would be all good, and we could ride out these bumps that were on our horizon. And that was alternative one. Alternative two was to take the next 40 years that we should have been preparing for these bumps, meaning now, um, and just take predatory capitalism to the max, right? And a small group of people would garner 90% of the value of the commodity valued planet, and everyone else would die. Right? That was alternative two. Alternative three was to go somewhere in between, right? And that's, but have more wars. So instead of having a conflict through all these cities and stuff, their own little beeswax, push that kind of conflict out into places, I think, like Syria, Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan, Libya, all of Africa, and focus on places that had resources in the ground that couldn't be blown up per se. But if you kill all the people, then you would have all that stuff, right? So that was it. We took alternative three. And basically stretch out the conflict of the white working class and just string them out on drugs, conflict, and a racial divide, right? And then let them kill each other to a point where we could go into a Zardoz kind of world, right? That's why you need to go watch that movie. And I was in a conference that was in 71 or 72 or around there. It's just before or around Nixon getting reelected again. So I guess it was 72. And Watergate kind of was happening. And anyway, and hey there, Frankenstein. Hey there, buddy. Glad you showed up. You were here. You kind of cruised through the other day, and I didn't get to say hi. And I'm saying I love you now. So anyway, I was at this conference and they laid out exactly what's happening now on the dot of everything that was going on. And they were going on about how there were going to have to be red flags. First time I ever heard red flag was these guys. And they said that if they were going to have to do something like blow up the World Trade Center or the Eiffel Tower or some real iconic thing and blame it on the Arabs, right? And this was in 72, and they went on about exactly what's going on now, that there'd be starvation and plagues and all of this because that shit was already going on. It just wasn't on the front page, right? Because they were keeping it on the down low, right? So they could get a hold of people's stuff, right? So anyway, I'm at this conference, and like I said, I'm the youngest guy there. The closest other young person was in their 50s, and everybody else was like between 58 and 80. Henry Kissinger was there. Mr. Rothschild was there, and I showed you pictures of me at the UN, and everyone's in their suits, and I'm looking like the guy in the Ukraine in my T-shirt. And I was running the conference. That was later on in 80 something. Because I went to this one, and then another one, and then I was at the National Laboratories, and I had a critique of a representation of. Well, this guy, he's not your average guy, but that's good because there's only one of him and he has a skill set that no one else has. And we kind of need him. And I know you guys watch this all the time. So, hey, You need me now to fine tune this thing because just a little bit this way, and we don't have to you know have the bonfire of the vanities because every time that goes down, you guys, the rich guys, the people who think they're in power, you are the ones who are at the end of the guillotine. Yes, guys like Rothschild and Henry Kissinger, they go off into transhuman, some server someplace and live a happy holiday. But that's few and far between. The rest of you morons, the Elon Musks, the Jeffy Bezos, the fornicating whatever, all of you morons, you're going to be, you know, at the end of that guillotine. It's going to be on TV, and everyone's going to be. It's going to be the new game show. You know, guillotine the billionaire. Guillotine the oligarch. And all of you guys like Mr. Putin there. I feel sorry. You're being set up, Charlie. You know, you are not the decider. Mr. Ukraine, you are not the decider. Morons in South Africa, the best way of doing it is how when Germany, when Germany was reunified, it was the most people don't understand Germany. Germany is like, 10 little countries in one country, right? And they're not all the same. Yeah, they're all white, but they're all really different. More different than the people in America. In America, we're all Americans. It doesn't matter what color you are. You talk to a Chinese American of 3 or 4 generations here, they sound just like a Valley girl or whatever. I mean, they do not. They're not. No. So, but in Germany, not so much. They're all different. They still are. But when it was being unified, the people who were in control at the time in the West, who had the money, they could have done one or two. They could have done what happened in South Africa. They could have made a feign towards bringing all the institutions together, so they're all kind of economically, socially together. But then in South Africa, they put no money into it. So all of those people who had been black and basically, you know, been in apartheid for 100 years, even though there were black politicians, they were still in apartheid economically. Right? Germany didn't do that. They raised the taxes on the rich and gave all of that extra money over to the guys in the East and lifted them up and said, this is going to take 3 generations. We have to educate, educate, educate. We have to give these people jobs. We have to upgrade their everything. So you go to Germany, the places that were in the East are the ones that are the new shiny cities and have the great technology, da 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 da. That have, yes, the western part of Germany is still, but it's like more traditional and older, but it's now everyone's on an even um, um, plate. So when Syria happened and Germany took in 1 million Syrians because their white race was not, um, keeping up with replacement rate. So they brought in these, and they pretty much the Syrians that got to Germany had been educated, had gone to college. They weren't the poor people. The poor people had no money to get there. So the rich, the upper middle class who had before the war broke out were working in banks. And because see, I went to Syria in the early 70s, late 60s. Beautiful place. I mean, you'd want to live there more than America. I mean, everyone had a job, everyone had free education, everyone had free healthcare, everyone had a house, everyone ate. Same thing with Iraq and Libya. Libya was like unbelievably great, right? And all the shit that our media said about these guys, yes, if you talk smack about the great leader, yeah, you know, you would go disappearing. But I was in the capital city of Syria, and I went there on a tourist visa with a bunch of Swedes, and my visa said I was Swedish, but the Swedes were all gray and like in their 60s, and I was in my 20s. I was wearing a Hawaiian shirt, cowboy hat, cowboy boots, mirrored sunglasses. I didn't look like your average Swede, even though my visa said it was, and I had an international driver's license that I used as my passport because it looked just like a passport. Had a picture on it, had a bunch of stamps on it. So the guy at the gate, he doesn't care. He just looks at it point blank. If he has the computer, he sees if you're on the list. If he doesn't have it, he's just got a list that coffee stays on it, and he doesn't spend more. Unless you really look like a threat, he's just like you're here in a he's okay. After 3 weeks, your visa's up. You're not on that airplane, and we catch you doing something after that. You might have a problem. But before then, not so much. That's how I stayed in hotels, and I had the tours and all my meals, and it was just amazing. And even Sweden, very guaranteed. They wanted you to get out of Sweden for a couple of weeks. And the people were so neurotic. Everyone was guaranteed they sign up for it at work, blah blah blah. Special desk and signed up. And then you went to the gate and signed in. You would, and you were already, stamped in. You had the visa. You were good to go. But if that guy showed up, they'd get to see. But if they didn't, you get on the airplane. So I did that for a year. I went all over the frigging world, as a Swede. So, and the Swedes were the most banal, neutral. Everyone loved them. You could go anywhere, right? And they were pretty rich. So governments liked them to trade with them, so they treated them nice. And so, I did that for a year. It was can't do that today, but back in 1960 or 70, whatever it was, I did it for a year. I guess it was in the early 70s. So anyway, it was before Don. I took Don over there. We did it a little bit, but Damascus. So we land, and the guys who are the tourist guys are the Swedes. See, once Swedes leave Sweden, it's hard to get them to go back, and that's when they get wild and crazy. You hear about wild and crazy Swedes, ones who left and don't go back. Right. So I get off the airplane and they look at me. You're our kind of guy. So after they would put the boring Swedes to bed at about 8 in the evening, they would take me out to clubs, and then they take me out to after hour clubs, and then after that they took me to the secret places underground where poets were and read poems against the leader. Right. Anyway, one of those nights I went out with these guys, and we went to this place that had hookahs. So they had hash, and they had other things they were burning in those things, and then they had yummies. So by that time, we'd already smoked a lot, already drank a lot. So by the time we went to this underground place, I was on another planet. Right now, these guys were used to it, and they would just kind of nod out. Me, I was like, yeah, woo! I was swinging from the chandeliers, and I was looking for the bathroom, and I kind of just took a wrong turn and was down this thing and went up some stairs and went outside and I was out in the alley and then boom, I was out on the street. I did not have a clue where I was, where my hotel was. I looked and there was a clock over there and it said like 3 in the morning, and there weren't that many people on the street, and there were a couple of cops down there with machine guns, and I'm looking around and I am tripping my balls off, right? And stoned out of my mind and drunk. And I normally don't do any of that, right? I'm normally a sober, I observe. And so I'm looking around and I'm trying to figure out where I am. And this guy's leaning against this car. He's just there. I mean, the cops over there got machine guns. Over there's a tank, and then there's this guy in a suit, rumpled suit. He's smoking a cigarette. And he goes, in English, he goes, "Are you lost?" And I said, "Yes." And when you're in a hotel, those places, the hotel keeps your visa, and they give you this like little official card saying you're staying at this hotel and you're a tourist, and they stamp it, and that's like as good as your passport, as good as the visa, but it's in this nice little card that doesn't really matter, right? But if you lose your passport and visa, this could be a problem. So anyway, the guy looks at it, goes, "Oh, I know where it is. Get in, I'll drive you." So we're driving, and he's just talking about this and that. And he speaks great English, and he's talking about, you know, what football team? And I said, you mean soccer? He goes, no, football. What football? Are you a Jets? Are you a this? You're that? And I go, well, I'm from Sweden. And he kind of goes, oh yeah, you're from Sweden. And he just kind of chuckles. Anyway, we're talking. He goes, you want another drink? What do I got to lose? So he takes me to this other place, and it's like the nightclub hangout for policemen and special agents galore, right? And I'm in there, and they're smoking from the hookahs, and they have even better shit than those other guys had. So we're in this little VIP room, and there are all these guys, and some are colonels, and I'm just there, and I'm like 20 something, wearing Hawaiian shirt and shorts and flip flops and mirrored sunglasses still and a cowboy hat. And they're all asking about American stuff, right? If I watch Dallas, what do I think of Mary Hartman, and this one colonel goes on the existential blah 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 Mary Hartman. I mean, and they're all speaking great English. They've all been educated in America. They all think I must be in the CIA because they're talking about their good buddies at the NSA, CIA, you name it. And I'm just sucking on the tit and drinking this gooey stuff that tastes really good and making me hallucinate. So again, I just kind of nod out like this, and I don't remember that much, but I remember being picked up, carried out to this guy's car. There were two of these other guys in the back. They drive me to my hotel, and once after 12 o'clock, if you're not in that hotel, they don't let you in. Right? You got to fend for yourself, and or maybe 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock. But this is like now 4 or 5 o'clock. The sun looks like it's not coming up yet, but it's almost. And you know, I'm gone, but I kind of and so, you know, I you know, wake up, knock, 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 and it's about 11 in the morning, right? And they trolley in this thing of coffee and tea and lemon water and nice little pastries and a nice breakfast, right? An omelet and some other stuff. And it's the guy, right? And behind him is concierge. And now I'm here, we're going to be here for 2 weeks. We're here. This is like maybe my eighth day, right? So I've gotten to know the concierge pretty good. And, he was, I was wondering what was going on in the world. And he said, well, I was here when they brought you in, and the secret police and the army brought you in. I said, what? I said, they treated you like you were their brother. I said, what? They carried you up, put you in the shower, cleaned you up. You had vomited on yourself, and they didn't they just chuckled, And I was, what? And he goes, yeah, they thought you were, CIA, NSA, or even more of the above, like Hail Hydra. They were saying Hail Hydra, and I said, what? And so I still had a few more days, and what was truly amazing. So I didn't do that again, at least not on that level. I mean, he still went out with the Swedes when they would party after we put the old farts away. But we went to other places, other towns. We didn't stay in Damascus. We went out to where the Buddhist temple was, and that was truly amazing. And we stayed in that place for 2 days, and we went to a couple other places, like really amazing sites that ISIS totally destroyed. Right? Don't exist anymore. They like rewrote history because that whole area was Buddhist. That was like a crossroads of the not just the Middle Eastern stuff going into Europe, but the stuff coming from Asia. That's why they wanted another route. So anyway, I wouldn't be surprised if the Vatican had something to do with destroying that stuff a few years ago. But anyway, and every place I went, there were guys like the guy in a crumpled suit smoking a cigarette against a black kind of car, nondescript car. They all had black nondescript cars, and they were very easy to spot because everyone was far away from them, and they were just their car would be someplace near a fountain, so they get the little sprinkle of water, or under a tree, and they would just or they might have a little cup of coffee or sitting at a cafe, but they were there, and they always give me the the secret signal. They were like, that's our brother. We have to keep an eye out for him. Let's keep him protected. So that is the world out there, gang. It's not what you think it is. It's not like your neighborhood isn't what you think it is. You aren't even what you think you are. You know, and that is a sad fact, because when you are that ignorant of who you are, where you came from, and what you're doing, if you don't know your 20, don't know your 360, you aren't consciously aware, and you aren't consciously intent with what you're doing with your life, you're fucked. No matter how much money you have, no matter whatever you carrying a gun. Well, the statistics show why I don't need to have a gun. You know, I've already died 7 times. I know I got 2 more to go. So, I've already been shot. I know what it's like to get shot. And I got shot in the most dangerous of dangerous situations. And I got a flesh wound, right? And boy, that went a long way. Every policeman I knew, like, looked at me like I was John Wayne. The people in my house, I work for the New York City Housing Authority. My boss, who loved my ass, because what me and my partner were doing, we were in his little house, and he had 1,200 apartments he had to secure for the New York City Housing Authority, and the buildings they had. And our rates of crime, of murders, of violence, of all of the above was like way down, because we were the ultimate in good cop, bad cop. She would kill anything on sight. She made RoboCop and Arnold Schwarzenegger look like a pussy, and she had one. And she was the first woman to graduate the Army's Ranger School, and she was so badass that they kept her there to teach, and everyone was scared of her. And when she retired because she was bored, and she went to work, she found the most hard ass criminal situation in New York at that time, and it was the housing authority. And none of 1,100 housing authority police wanted, or however many there were. Because in our house there were only 12 guys and 2 girls, and nobody wanted to work with her. They were scared of her. They thought she, just And my boss, when I showed up, because I was there under other pretense, I surely had nothing to do with the police. I had helped put together this other housing authority. The New York City Housing Authority absorbed us, and they said, "You have to be part of this organization for this to happen. Otherwise, we're still going to fight you." Blah blah blah. So I said, "Sure, I'll do that." As long as I have the freedom to do whatever the fuck I want, however I want to do it, and that I'm going to do all this other stuff because it's part of me doing this. And they said, "Yes, we know. You're an outlier. You are. That's why we want you, because there's nobody else like you, and God help us if there is." But yes, so I did, right? And so I would walk around and talk to everybody, and make sure they didn't kill each other, right? And made them laugh, and interceded before things got you know out of taken away, right? So anyway, that's where we are at this place. And the other interesting thing is it's a perfect storm. Every 60,000 years this occurs, meaning we are going, so the global warming thing, it's not coming out of the back of your pipe, because they already know it's a thing our solar system is going through. All of this shit there are planets near Jupiter that were ice cubes when we sent our first little probes out there. Now they are liquid, meaning everything is heating up. It's not just us. It's not our burning of carbon. And if we didn't cut down the rainforest, and one of the reasons they did cut down the rainforest wasn't so they could have cows there. I mean, that was one reason, but no, they did it because they wanted to have an excuse to say why things were getting. It's the carbon, you know. There is no carbon sinks, Well, there's a carbon sink that's called the oceans, that are 3/4 of the planet, right? So, no, none of this. And what's happening in the oceans, it's not happening because of why are the ice sheets melting? It's not because of your SUV, or the burning of coal. No, I mean that shit ain't good, but it's not that, right? This was already known that's going to happen, right? And it already happened in little ways, in the last 1,600 years, um, and there's the Thames in England have frozen in July a number of times. So the thing is not to worry so much about global warming. My good friend Art Bell and Whitley Strieber wrote a book called The Day After Tomorrow. Go read that book, watch the movie. That's what's going to happen. And things are going to get really hot, going to get really crazy, really wild storms, woo, 700 tornadoes coming at you in Kansas or New Jersey. And then, when the Atlantic Ocean, when the African train slows and stops, there's stuff going on in the North Sea between Iceland, Greenland, and Ireland. There are these little centrifugal forces of the ocean because of its depth and a whole bunch of other reasons, but the majority is the salinity of the ocean. It's sucking all of the weather from Africa across that little corner of the Wayward Islands into the Atlantic on the other side of Brazil, and then up the Gulf of Mexico, along the East Coast, all across, Greenland, Iceland, and you go to Ireland, East Coast Ireland, where the North Sea is, it's always raining dark. It's like England, is, right? West Coast environment is like Florida. It's got palm trees. The water is always 70 degrees because the Gulf of Mexico, that's the first place it hits, right? That ring of Kerry, they're like swimming pools, right? Well, what happens is if those little swirly things out there near Greenland and Iceland slow down and stop, which they are doing because of all of that super duper, unsalty water in the ice sheets are melting by billions of gallons, trillions of gallons a day, and it's all going in there. And so soon as it breaks down the salinity of that gigantic chunk of ocean in North Atlantic, the train's going to stop. And soon as the weather pattern is not being dragged from Africa into the United States, we're in the north. We're in the northern hemisphere. That's what they call it, that, right? And so basically, and if you dig into the ground, if you're a geologist, you can see that this place had been frozen a number of times before. They called it the Ice Age, and we're heading for one. Not burning up. Well, we're gonna have those fires that were, before I started this whole thing, and again, in 1971, 72, whenever it was, I went on that conference. It was unbelievable, right? And the fact that I was young, people, I was a new face, and I was kind of entertaining, and I kind of knew what they're talking about, and I listened, and I asked really interesting questions. Um, I ask the interesting questions, and they don't like that. They just want to quote the Bible, right? And that's what they quote, not have God in their heart. Anyway, so that's the story. Um, what else can I say? Oh, oh yes. The other interesting thing was, they had the Paris Accord. That was 100 years from that date. They were in Paris, and at that time, France was the whoop-de-doo of science. And they basically, there's two people left. There were about four. Come on, get those thumbs up. Send some money to PayPal. I really need it. The dude awake 42 at Gmail. You get it. Send me an email, and I'll send you one of my novels. Right now, a number of people have received them, and they say, "Well, you got it, so all I can do is read it." Well, that's all I want you to do, and I want you to comment back to me. You can comment on that, and that would be nice. That's what I want. Well, unlock it so I can, take it apart and say I wrote it. No, I'm sorry, I'm not going to do that. Well, I just want to send it to other people so they can read. Well, good. Send them to my dude awake 42 at Gmail, and I will send it to them in the same manner that I sent it to you. But I'm not going to unlock it. I'm not going to let go of what I've created. I want you to read it. Tell me what you think, right? And not use it for your own monetary needs. Come on. Now I do this thing that way. I just throw it out there in the universe and however it goes. And I was happy to do it for John, because a lot of people saw it, 75,000, right? Now, thousands of people watch this, and I'm more, since I dropped the pebble into it, it's more quality over quantity. Right? And so, let's see. There we go. Let's see what a few people have been saying. Uh, the fuck is that? I mean, how does that happen? Hmm. On my dashboard, it says it's all working. Well, if it's out, there we go. Oh, it's that. No, I mean, I get screwed with by the powers that be, and that shows me that they are watching and they love me. And like I said, I'm ready to go back to work for you guys. You need me. Come on. I want to have more than $400. If you really want, just drop a few grand into my bank account because you could do that, no problem. You have the keys of the kingdom. Then I would know. Okay, I'm on the payroll. Then you could, send me an email and say, Al, why don't you talk about this? I'm all up for it. I'm up for doing, the late night TV scene needs to be shook up. I have a few friends that would, I can have them on there. And I've had them on as guests. And, so I'm an asset that, yes, I'm still doing, my work, having God in my heart and Jesus in my head and shamanically transmitting that out into the world, and that's good. I signed on for that, and as long as I'm in this mud puppet, I'm going to be doing that because I died in 2014. I had my life review. I got an A plus plus with a bunch of stars, but they said go back and finish up. Then you'll be really happy with where you go next. Right? So hey, I'm no fool. Yes, at 20 years of indulgence, I burned up a lot of parts of my body, but I'm keeping everything in homeostasis. And as long as every time I go get my doctor, oh, you need to take these pills, those pills, this pill, that's pills, and when I do, I feel like shit. But when I don't, and I just, eat because I can't afford to buy crappy food, I eat little and I eat what's growing in the forest. And now the kids are driving their motorcycles through the forest. I can't. They rode over where the golden seal and the melrose, the mushrooms grow, and they crushed them all. Now they haven't killed, because it's a gigantic phylum underground, and until they start spilling oil on the ground and gasoline on the ground, well, the vapors of their motors, plunk the top, the leaves and the this out. But it won't kill that phylum because the phylum is further away than just that little place where they're driving. But it's so that's everything that's going on. I showed you the burning down of Phoenix. You think it's bad now, kids? Woo! The next 4 years, and politically, I mean, so you know what the thing is? Donald Trump, uncle, right? His father's brother was a big time scientist in super duper esoteric shit, right? Go watch, Dark Journalist, DJ, and he's got Joseph. Joseph P. Farrell and Catherine Austin Fitz and a few other folks that are quite amazing. Now, anybody you see on YouTube, you should not believe anything they say. What it is, it's like me. I give you stories that percolate in your head. You should go do your homework, Don't believe a word I say, This is just for entertainment's sake and send me some money on PayPal. The dude awake 42 at Gmail, dude awake 42 at Gmail, dude awake 42 at Gmail. But Donald Trump got into presidency, and he had access to everything that was there. He could see and read anything. And his uncle was all about the UFO. He was the guy who was there when they had the contract signed with FDR, and that's why FDR didn't have a brain aneurysm. He put a gun in his mouth and blew the back of his head out, right, in Georgia, right? That's why I had a close coffin, because you'd see that he blew the back of his head out, right? Not a brain aneurysm, right? And Forrestal, who was also there, was thrown out of a window because he said, "Well, this deal ain't that great. Yeah, they're giving us all these toys, but that's if they're giving it to us. I mean, we're almost, with the Manhattan Project, the atomic bomb wasn't really the thing on the top of the. It was dark magic. The whole Manhattan Project is dark magic. What was known as the Rad Lab was dark magic. And what is magic? But another man's science and another man's religion, right? So, you know, so Donald Trump, was spirited in all of this. You should go see pictures of him as a teenager, the military school that he was at. You can see energetically where he's coming from, right? So Downey is no stupid moron. He isn't, you know. All he is a nihilist, all about Downey, right? And he is on the low end of middle management of this esoteric occult dark magic crew, right? Hail Hydra, right? And that's the people they put in: senators, congressmen, dog catchers, presidents, right? They aren't stupid, but they do not have integrity. They do not have a spiritual side. They do not have God's unconditional love in their heart and God's unconditional forgiveness in their head. And that's why, I'm not, a brain surgeon or a politician, because, I don't have the lacking of empathy to have those jobs. And, but for a good deal of my life, I was around those centers of power because I had a skill set and I was one person they could depend on. They knew how I was going to act, and there's only one of him. We don't have to worry about him. He's going to act this way. He's going to do the right thing. He's going to persevere, and he's actually working for us. He keeps telling us he's always telling us the truth. I can't lie. And so the people really high up on the totem pole, which means they don't mean anything. The guys on the lower end, are the foundation, right? And they're ones with the closer integrity. They understand what's going on. They know the long haul of this, and this is a work in progress, right? It's not a done deal. It's not a race. And the morons who think they're in charge are acting like it's a race because they know, they first advertise end of world Y2K. All the computers are going to crash. Blah blah blah. Well, I was told all about it when I was in fucking 14 in the seminary, because my physics teacher was at Langley, and he was also at Bletchley Park with he went to what's the name of that school? Do I have the hat? Those English Oxford, right? And he was with Turing, and he was Turing's boyfriend when Turing wrote the Golem, which is all about transhumanism. He wrote that in the 1920s, before anyone had Nikola Tesla had invented semiconductors, but no one knew what's that. He had an AI. He had an AI in 1891. He showed the War Department, that's when they call it the War Department, and said, I can manufacture 1,000 of these and put them on our coastline, and we won't have to have wars. We won't ever have to worry about being attacked. These things will see the ships 100 miles away. They will know who's friend and foe, and they will go sink them. And there won't be a person on board. They will be totally, and they will go save people when a boat's going down. It'll go save them. And they said, well, that's a nice idea, but thanks, Nick, we're not going to do that, right? And he was part of that whole Stetson esoteric occult science. Rudolf Steiner, Wilhelm Reich, what's his name, Mr. Sleeping Prophet of the Midwest, and a whole bunch of others. The guy who invented Mr. TV. He was a farmer and he invented TV. And General Serenoff went and stole all the shit out of his barn and set his barn on fire. And then 4 years later, came back. Listen, we found your shit, and we can't make heads or tails, but we know it's going to work. Can you come and work for us? What's his name? It'll pop into my mind. So they took him to Jersey, and they gave him his nice lab and brought his kids, and they went to private school and lived in a nice house, and he perfected TV. And he was the guy who invented the electron gun, right? And a few other things. Ooh, it's right on the tip of my tongue. Anyway, and they were building the, Rockefeller Center. And Mr. Rockefeller, um, David, had his office there. And General Sarnoff, David and Sarnoff, he wasn't in the military. But he wanted everyone to salute him. And so they're in this big fancy office. I had these French doors that went out onto Fifth Avenue, right? And in front of the where you go into 30 Rock, there's like a garden, and it's all kind of got these concrete wally pot things. You can't really get at it, right? But it's right underneath where these French doors are, and there's like a little ledge, maybe 8 inches. So you open the door, and you can just put your toes there and have that view. And there's no gate or anything. You're not supposed to take the next step, right? So he had perfected everything. He had patented everything in his name. And Sarnoff and David were there, and they had this guy's family there, wife and kids. And these big burly guys had his wife and kids dangling out the door, and Sarnoff. What was his name? It'll pop into my mind. Anyway, there's a entity that is named after him, and of esoteric engineers. Anyway, so they said sign those papers, and we won't throw your family out the door. We won't drop them on that concrete thing 30 stories down. Right? They're all screaming and yelling and crying and being traumatized. But these were big burly guys. That family wasn't going anywhere unless they let them go. So the guy signed everything. The guys brought them in, and Rockefeller said, "I'm going to personally take care of your family. So the kids are going to go to school. Your wife will never have to worry about anything. Everything will be fine. But you got to go." And they just chucked him out the door. Woo! And he did, what happened to Forstall. Forstall went out a window at the military hospital in D.C. from like the 16th floors up because he was there and made the deal with the aliens to get the technology and alternative three and all the above. And he said the American, not only the American, but the human race they just went through a war. They had a right to choose, and they chucked him out the door. Right. And Kennedy was after he got run over by the Japanese, his PT boat got run over. He was already a sick kid to begin with, and he was in the far back. I mean, he wasn't fighting anybody. He was just zipping around on that PT boat like it was his yacht and stooping the nurses, and he got ran over. He's heading for the nurses, and he was running without lights, and the Japanese destroyer was running without lights, and they were both going fast, and whoop, the destroyer, you're a big metal boat going 20 knots, and you go over a plywood boat, there's nothing but splinters left. So bottom line was, good luck with that. So Kennedy saw all of that. Now he came from a criminal family, right? And so he first Congress. First he was, he hung out with that because he knew a bunch of languages. He hung out with Forstall. He made the deals with the Nazis. He made the deal with Hail Hydra to spirit 70,000 scientists, engineers, and administrators and spies into the American government through Operation Paperclip. 70,000, not a few hundred, 70,000. That's why we had the CIA. That's why we had the National Security Act. It turned our government into Hail Hydra, right? That's why we have the best legislators money can buy, right? And it's not a hidden fact. Just go. I mean, there's the woman who is a Democrat, you know, um, we were going to, the guys who are head tax. And one of the things that was going to pay for Biden's Build Back Better was, can you still hear me? You know, I'm saying stuff that they might want to shut me up. They want they, if they, people go, well, they're going to shoot you one day. No, I will be hit by a hellfire missile. All of those little, androids that are flying around the Mid East, blowing up people. They're flying around America too, right? So, they will do a nice thing of just hitting me with a hellfire missile, and I won't even see it coming, which is fine by me. Um, and the other side of the coin, dying like I've seen. I worked in hospitals, for old people for dementia and senility. I worked in cancer hospitals. I worked in being the guy who made everyone happy and learned how to deal with their dying. I mean, that was one of my skill sets. So, I've done that for myself. So, every night I go to bed and I kind of energetically put myself in a place so I can go to sleep for a good 12 hours. And then when I wake up and my body has like run a marathon and done all kinds of things, but is kind of, rested, um, my body is in unbelievable pain because everything, when you go to sleep, you unplug your autonomic system, just unplug. So you don't run around, but I kind of do. And so I have to meditate for, 15 minutes to an hour to put myself in homeostasis. And when I do, I put my socks on, my pants on, and head myself into, working on stuff. So anyway, so, you know, that's where I am at, and I'm happy. I've always been happy. I'm never, no matter where I was, how terrible thing seem to other people. "Oh, that's so terrible, aren't you? Aren't you unhappy?" No, I'm not. Because it always can be worse, right? I mean, when I died. That 7 years to crawl up from death up to being, losing 200 pounds and being in pretty good shape, at least to get around. You know, that was 7 years for. Please wait while we try to reconnecting. Hmm. Anyway, I guess they want me to go. So remember, PayPal. Okay, I'll come back. I'll try it. If I go further than to get a bag of ice, maybe I'll go someplace and come back, recharge. Okay, love you guys. Stay in touch. Remember you're 20. Remember you're 360. Remember who you are, where you came from, and what you're doing here. You're here to be love's co-creation. They surely didn't want me to say that.